right, we're now being joined by the founder of Nigeria Mental Health, Chime Asonye. His organization has outlined a 10-point agenda for the implementation of the Mental Health Act. Thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Yes. So, okay, let's start from that recommendation of yours. Then we can talk about other issues around mental health.
Sure.
Yes. What are the key points?
Well, thank you for this conversation. And we have to remember, as the speakers were mentioning today, is World Health Day and health for all. But when we think about health for all, mental health is not part of that conversation. Often it's neglected in things like budgeting. It's a limited part of the health budget. It's only around 3 to 4% of the entire health budget. So we need to make sure that health and mental health is put at parity with physical health and social well-being. So we laid out a 10-point agenda for implementing the Mental Health Act. The Mental Health Act was passed earlier in January 5th, and my organization was involved with coordinating advocacy to make sure that the Mental Health Act passed. Our first recommendation is that we need to see the gazetted copy of the Act on trusted government portals. It ushers in a new terrain of rights for individuals who have mental health conditions, but people can't publicly access it. So if you want to know your rights, the new human rights and management and care that's there, we need to make sure it's in a trusted website. We've launched a campaign as our second recommendation to decriminalize attempted suicide. It's called Suicide Not Crime NG. And the point of that is that the World Health Organization indicates that because Nigeria currently criminalizes attempted suicide with up to a year in prison, people don't want to talk about their psychological vulnerabilities or their challenges. They don't want to talk to their friends, or they don't want to talk to physicians because they might be detained or jailed if they have suicidal ideation. We feel like most of the world has had these laws based on colonial legacies, but most of the laws have been repealed across the world. There's only about 20 or so countries that have it, that have imperialist legacies. So Nigeria is one of the remaining countries that does. Ghana, just this week, decriminalized attempted suicide. And so we should follow suit like the rest of the world and make sure we decriminalize it. We need to increase mental health budgeting, as I mentioned. Right. And we also need to make sure that a lot of stakeholders are involved. When people think about mental health, they just think about people like psychiatrists. But we know that a lot of people are involved in the mental health field. Psychologists, lay counselors, psychotherapists, wellness coaches like yoga and things like that, right? So all those voices need to be part of the conversation. Social workers, nurses, right, need to be part of the conversation. It can't just be one demographic and field. Also, when we think about the mental health budget, right now, almost 100% goes towards institutions and drugs, which is very wrong. When you think about your own mental health, right? If you're a person of faith, you might do prayer therapy. You might go to yoga, right? You might do a support group, right? You might do art therapy, you might journal, you might do gratitude journals, etc. like that. There's a lot of ways people deal with healing and coping. Why do we have almost 100% of the funding go to drugs and institutionalization? It's that same conception we have that people who have mental health conditions are crazy and we need to lock them up and we need to give them drugs and things like that. So those are some of the things that we put. And then the final one I'll mention, we have 10 points, but the final one I'll mention is that we need to make sure that mental health is the Mental Health Act is domesticated across in different states. It can't just be at the federal level. We're really glad that we've had it because it's been an almost 2-year journey to get a Mental Health Act. But we need it at the subnational level because the state governments are critical actors in making sure that mental health is given to citizens at the grassroots.
You know, in all of this, have you also considered, because this is Nigeria, we're Africans, and they talk about stigmatization. So when you talk about mental health, I'm excited that you also made mention of how much of a concern it is for people to now almost equate it to being crazy and mad.
You're saying the exact, so you say we're Africans and Nigerians, and there's two ways you can think about that. The first way you can think about it is that Africans and Nigerians, or black people in general, don't have mental health as an issue, as a challenge. That's the first thought. A lot of people think that mental health is a white man's disease. We both don't have it, but that can be further from the truth. One of the highest rates of suicide, actually the highest incidences of depression on the continent is in Nigeria. We have the 7th largest rank in the context of Africa of suicides. We have the 5th largest suicides in the world in terms of incidences. There was just a report from the 2023 World Happiness Index. It said that Nigeria ranked 95th. We're in the bottom third. So Nigerians, and you saw the intro here.
We went from being the happiest people on earth.
So one of the most frustrated. You saw the queues, lines.
Yeah.
You saw people dealing with the cash policies. You have higher inflation. You know, there's challenges because of everything. No lights, no power.
So that no one gets stigmatized.
Yeah.
How can someone, you know, openly present himself or herself, you know, for such attention and say, I need
help?
Well, there's camp. First of all, we need to not criminalize it, right? We can't be thinking of mental health as something that's criminal. We need to be thinking about it as a public health issue. If you're psychologically vulnerable, you don't need to be put in jail. You need support. So as a country, we need to be embracing the fact that it's not something criminal that needs to be engaged in. The second thing is, if you look at the polling, to your point, most of the polling, if you look at the top reasons why Nigerians think of a mental health disease, the number 70% of Nigerians believe it's somebody running around crazy and mad. They believe another higher percentage believe that it's when someone is hurting themselves or talking themselves. So our idea of what mental health is needs to change. And it can change in everyday conversations. One, by shifting things that we think of as supporting mental health, like I said, yoga and things like that. As a government, we need to change that context. But secondly, I think it's really important that we open up these conversations in general. So there's a lot of...
Because we don't have much time, maybe 30 seconds.
Yeah.
How do you protect your mental health as an individual? First off, what are the things you even need to look out for to begin to question your own, you know, mental state?
I think
is that a possibility?
It's different for everybody, you know what I mean? Mental health is how you think, feel, and act. So for me, the way I protect my mental health, using things like music therapy, doing things like advocacy. So when I was looking around in Nigeria and I was trying to figure out what the challenges were, I didn't know where to go, which is why I started Nigerian Mental Health, because I went to work with communities and people at the front lines and figure out where resources are. So one of the things we have on Nigerian Mental Health, for instance, is we have all the crisis hotlines in Nigeria where people can call if they're having a challenge or if they feel like they have a breakdown. They can go to our website and they can call. But if they also want to do other things like join the petition to decriminalize attempted suicide, it's also available on our website. And then also the gazetted copy of the Nigerian Mental Health Act is also available on our website. So we know we need to give people the resources and the tools, and that is different for everybody. It could be yoga for somebody, it could be a therapist, but people need to have access to those resources.
I like the music part.
Yes.
Yeah, stay with that a lot more. Thank you so much, Chime Asonye, founder, Nigeria Mental Health.
Yes.
And thank you for the work you do.